This is Zim Olson presenting on Zim Mathematics and Creative Math live presentation. I thought this would be an interesting way to do a Zim Math presentation, a little survey as a live presentation, no notes, no script anyway. First we'll get into a brief history and background of myself and my mathematics. I'll then get into creative mathematics and its creative method I use myself. I hope to show it I substantiate how it's an axiomatic approach, and that there's always a result, symbolic statements, as well as we know in scientific methods that there's always a basis for observable fact. I feel there's always a basis for symbolic statements, results. This can be useful. I get into my existential synopsis, which I developed a great deal since my last doing of this presentation. I went a whole new presentation on my synopsis, and which is separate from this, but I'll go over it here live. The expression formula, part of what I was saying before in my philosophy, there's always a basis for symbolic statements or math art, and I substantiated through system and or subsystem paradigm that I've developed, and also it's well known that objects in science on their basis, they all have a basis for, in fact, and I feel this applies to mathematical statements. In math concept art and analysis, I actually go over some math art pieces in the mathematical context, as I call it, coming up with mathematical material this way. Applications, I come up with more and more creative applications and axiomatic applications I think can be very useful, and the whole approach is useful itself. The future of Zim Mathematics, presentations and so forth, I just do a survey on that real quick, maybe with nonprofits or churches or other math conferences. Upcoming news items and events, upcoming actual presentations of mine at conferences, and so I hope you enjoy the show. I'm going over here my background, my education and work history. I have a Bachelor of Science in Computer and Information Science and a minor in Mathematics. Received this at Olson University in Rochester, Michigan, 1979. A typical computer science, information science degree, minor in mathematics. I have 48 credits in the University of Michigan, and good background there, and started my education, and I worked 3 to 4 years in software engineering. Here's a chronology of the math. Excuse me. I moved to Denver in 1980 and climbed the Front Range Rockies in 1981 and 1984. That's where during that time I began writing some of my mathematics. I ran out of money and began writing Zim Mathematics in 1984. In 1997, I joined the Mathematical Association of America. In 2004, I joined the American Mathematical Society. I attended several regional math conferences, MAA, Math Association of American Math Conferences, and a few of them very recently, and I began ZimMathematics.com in 2002. And I participated in a national joint mathematics meeting in 2011, and I participated in another one in Boston in 2012. Both of them went well. I talked to many mathematicians, 500 last time in Boston individually, and made available and distributed 400 of my DVDs and Zim Mathematics and some other literature on my existential synopsis. Here's another brief history slide in form of a slide cartoon I did in 1984. I was very good at doing cartoons at the time, and here's one of my favorite. It's a toaster the supreme machine in the form of a toaster, a toast popping out of it. You would read saying, "Sorry, wrong machine." You know, I laugh at that every time I see that. It kind of explains something there, and I have some other calculations on the toaster. Calculate any meaning. Science is always trying to calculate everything, which is a source of problems there in my mind. With on time, everything is subject to time, or it doesn't exist. And I noticed that the Science Supreme Machine toaster has to be plugged in. Here's another slide on history in the form of some artwork I've done back in 1984 when I first began my Zim mathematics. It's basically an exercise or attempt at capturing the idea of what is an absolute symbol. You know, people talk about absolute meaning, absolute truth, so I figure there must be absolute symbols. But I try to capture caricature of an absolute symbol, and maybe I failed. I guess I probably did, but shows what I mean, that there's probably no such thing as an absolute symbol, thus no such thing as absolute truth. And this is how I first started this exercise. Here's some more brief history with math self-portraits. I did. Started the first math self-portrait in 1984, and I was one from 2006, 2008, and the earlier one here. And 1994 was a favorite of mine, the portrait. It's a math self-portrait, and I just have nebulous geometric figures and expressed as basic operations with a question mark, nebulous question mark, and a cloud in my head, and a fish swimming around with a 3 times symbol in it, and I thought this was an interesting approach to creative math, and so I've been doing that for quite a while. I haven't done math self-portrait for 2011 or 12 yet, but maybe I should do that soon. I start getting into my creative mathematics and creative methodology. So how do you explain Zim's creative methodology? I have a thought or philosophy that every expression has a meaning or solution, you know, and with mathematics also. And so that is not surprising to some of us, but for mathematicians, that might be a little different way of looking at things. But I think the principle applies to mathematics as well. And here I have a Venn diagram of fruit showing, trying to explain the principle of the system and or subsystem paradigm I've developed with my work. Note that apples can be apples, oranges, and grapes can be viewed as a fruit or some f of x, a subset or a complete circle. Shows how any object can be modeled this way. Any concept, a knowledge, or physical item, or any object can be modeled as a system and or subsystem. And I have a little diagram below, and see, just showing how operations can be modeled as systems and or subsystems with giving different varying existential results. Here's another important feature of you should know about when approaching mathematics and creative methodologies. The limits to symbols and meanings within the system and or subsystem paradigm. Basically, I show that any criteria B and C has an expressed criteria B and C has an ever-diminishing return in meaning and functionality. This can apply to symbols, physical items, any expressed organization, or even a computer, I guess, has have this existential result. Basically, every criteria B, C, or D are unique items and events under my paradigm. Every item has a unique functionality or system functionality under the principal system. And I'll try to explain more about this later. As you get more criteria, B's and C's through Z, you increase more diminishing returns on the expression of system functionality or subsystem functionality, depending on how you do it. And, so this is an important feature of explaining why the creative method is important. Just expressing defined criteria with pre-existing definitions give ever diminishing returns, and this is important to know. So we look for alternative modes of expression. Here I show another important part of knowledge theory under my system and or subsystem paradigm. It is quite frequently thought that symbolic expressions can somehow be made to be functionally equivalent to principal systems, universe system, or so forth. And I hope to show here that that's probably not true. I don't know if I show it exactly with this graphic here. Principal system A, functional context, when they have the same functional context of a subsystem B, and showing that the functionality of any criteria B and C would not ever be equal, meaning you can never find the functionality of the universe. So I hope to go into this further and show that this gives them a need for creative mathematics and creative methodologies to come up with new expressions that are useful and viable, but even though they do not approximate the functionality of the universe. Here's a poem I hope to highlight what I'm talking about the need for a creative methodology. It's called Synthesis or Basis. I wrote this quite a few years ago. Don't really fully understand the mathematics behind it yet, but I think I kind of do. Do all items and or events exist in a set of relationships? Basis without synthesis would be an existential crisis. Synthesis without basis would give us no rationale to guide us. Basis and synthesis in one time would be an existential crime, giving the mathematics a crisis, meaning existential crime of basis and synthesis in one time. Like I say, I don't understand the mathematics fully, but I think it shows how some people might understand that and know the need for creative math methodologies. Here we go. I'm getting into my existential synopsis, which I wrote this slideshow in a year ago or a year and a half ago, and I've made a lot of progress on my existential synopsis, but this is a good review here, or introduction anyway. A system and or subsystem paradigm with 4 general behavioral components for each system. I'm just showing you how Zim mathematics takes the whole expression option of system and or subsystems, whereas metaphysics might consider the system constructs, the components of behavior, but not have a regard maybe for a principal system and their expressions. And theologies, God, Judeo-Christian expressions would have regard for a principal system, basically, and consider subsystem expressions as on their own as valid. God, Judeo-Christian theologies might disagree on the components of the principal system, but they do introduce the idea of components for a principal system, though. And science is primarily concerned, I think, with functionality of the principal system. In other words, NEA in the blue there, and the earthly sciences would be primarily concerned with sub-constructs, earthly sciences like business and computers and so forth, and they might have recognized the four behavioral components in these objects, but really have not come to terms with the existential basis for those behavioral components. And Zim mathematics, as I say, regards the whole enchilada as system and or subsystem expressions giving valid and giving varying existential results, physical constructs and partial system constructs, etc. So, the purpose of the next 5 slides is to highlight some of the options we have with my system and or subsystem expressions. Every object, operations, and behavioral components are A and numeric objects 1 and 0, 1 and or 0 are said to consist of systems. So I'll go over this and try to explain briefly what's going on in the next 5 slides with a breakup of these expressions. Here we have a principal system. Every A or numeric object 1 and or 0 expressing a subsystem, either every life A, time A, or some physical or qualitative construct A. And each of these systems and subsystems are said to be expressed or a function of some combination of basic operations, also modular systems. So here in this one, we have qualitative construct A or some physical construct A expressed as the basic operation or a function of the basic operation plus, as opposed to the other, excluding the other, in this sample, excluding the other basic operations. And the interpretation of what this would give in reality is, not sure what this represents. It could represent probably a number of existential qualitative construct A's. But I'll go on and cover the next 4 slides, other portions, other samplings of this expression. Here we have the same expression outline, only the system component of qualitative construct A for the system component of NEX or so-called mathematical system functionality is expressed. The blue is like states that is trying to indicate that NEX or qualitative construct A is expressed explicitly as a function of the basic operations. All other functionality indicated by the black basic operations is trying to indicate that these are not expressed explicitly, but are just still there as usual. So this would give some functionality of some physical object, for example, that consisting of the function of all the basic operations expressed as complete systems. In this slide, with the coloring of the basic operations in blue, I'm trying to indicate that some time A or some clock or biological clock or solar clock or universal clock, relativity, whatever it is. In this case, I'm trying to show that this time A construct, subsystem construct, is expressed as it's a function of the complete as a complete system. All the blue indicates a complete system, and it expressed as the basic operations modeled as complete systems. And I want to make sure you know that this blue indicates that the clock is expressed as a function of its own sub-internal workings, and as opposed to a principal system expression. So that would give a different outcome of the clock, whatever clock I would be talking about. Here in this expression, the clock time A, whatever solar, biological, calendar, universal, or relativistic, this clock is said to be expressed as a function of, or a principal system, basic operations, giving a different outcome of the clocks. And of principal system functionality, whatever numerical or qualitative construct A is implied here. In this outline, I'm expressing life object A, again as a function of, or expressed from principal system object A, or a numeric object 1 and/or 0. Here I'm trying to, I want to show that life object A can be expressed as a principal system, a function of a principal system, or a function of its own internal functionality. And if all basic operations under life object A were blue, that would indicate we were showing functionality of a body of system, subsystem, and it would give a different outcome. That would perhaps give a mortal death and other outcomes of life object A. And in this case, all the operations are indicated as black, and so perhaps we're expressing life object A as a function of the principal system, and that could give a different outcome to the object, indicating also a possibility of life after death, as some theologies indicate there is a possibility of, and those kind of documents how that could. The two different options are available. Here I'm showing some other important features I've developed with the use of my expression formula. Origin of the system transformation. I hope to show that expression of numeric objects F1 giving other behavioral components of a principal system, F0, F1 and 0, and F1 and or 0. I hope to show how this plays out in the Venn diagram further down in the presentation. Expressed as a system, they could be shown as all equivalent and expressed as subsystems or partial system constructs using only part of the operational components or set of operations, and you would only get a breakup of a Venn diagram into subsystems and systems. Omniscience is another thing I dreamed up with just expressing operations as systems. I think comes up with a good explanation for omniscience, common theological principle for different theologies, and existential constructs. Here I just try to show that math is different when using partial system expressions of operations. Here I put in colors the different usages of operations, and this would give our varying knowledge and mathematical constructs. And so I'll go on. Here I'm trying to show how operations expressed as subsystems or systems give different results. And they usually consider operations as universal constructs, but I feel that there are such things as operations operating within subsystems versus principal systems. And the derivations of the functional contexts and other behavioral components can be I hope to show it can be derived by expressions of operations of subsystems. So every plus, every division, every multiplication, every subtraction, minus would give a functional context of for the subsystem blue B. The different colors denote B, green, and blue are subsystems, and the A could be regarded as a principal system. And this could be a way of deriving these values for behavioral components for subsystems versus systems. Here's some more on existential synopsis, slide 20. And I just break up behavioral components, express them as Venn diagrams. A Venn diagram expressed as a system would be, of course, a complete circle. F1 and or 0 expressed as a partial system construct. Partial system expression would become a subset or subsystem, subfunctionality. And this is said to be functionality for expressed functionality for any object, source of functionality, apples, physical laws, thoughts, physical attributes, universes, principal systems, organizations, and they would all be said to have this Venn diagram functionality. It's particularly dependent on how it is expressed as a system and or subsystem. And I have to the right the diagram I showed you before, how this different disciplines, sciences, theologies, etc. Utilize various portions of this system and or subsystem paradigm. And they all are valid, but they all have different existential results. Here I'm just trying to make clear what I'm talking about with explanation of the system behavioral components as expressed as a Venn diagram, showing the functional context on the left, every X as in the yellow, and the non-X, non-stated functionality of the system object in the green, and the system functionality, the blue functionality on the right there, and the sub-functionality, sum-X is in the A, and the A is primarily the functionality that science may be concerned with, I think. I think there's probably a lot more I could say about this. I've said it so much, I think I'm leaving out some stuff. I don't know if I described the functional context of every X or any object. Non-X is a non-stated functionality, the green, of any object. Any X is a system. I call it now the system, and no system functionality is primarily the functionality the mathematicians and scientists maybe are using. Like any apple, any object has a functionality. They don't usually consider other behavioral components in their discipline, science. And so I should probably just go over this more later on. Here I'm trying to show some more graphically show some more of the dynamic of the system and or subsystem paradigm. It gets a little involved after a while when you consider all the expression options. As a system, the Venn diagram would be one circle. As a subsystem, it would break up like I showed before. Every X would equal any X equals some X equals non-X as for qualitative constructs, subsystems or systems, any object. Let's see, I described the Venn diagram in the prior slide, and let's go on. Here I'm explaining theology principles in terms of these expressions: numeric, qualitative, unknown, operational, and perhaps other constructs expressed as basic operations can help explain theological concepts, not so well documented mathematically. And here I have f numeric objects 1 and 0 and Jesus as a function of numeric objects 1 and 0 expressed as a function of the basic operations as complete systems. I think this is a good way to express what Jesus was saying. He did not try to employ qualitative constructs, which I feel are partial system constructs in themselves, partial system expressions. Numeric objects are a little different this way, and it can be used to express a principal system, I feel. The Judeo approach is a little different. They feel, I think, as far as I know, they express God and the Torah and their qualitative constructs as representative of the functionality of the universe and God. And of course, other religions do this sometimes too, but I think the Christian expression I have here is correct and interpretation of the Bible, etc. The Judeo interpretation would not use all 4 behavioral components, perhaps just a functional context and a basic functionality component of the system objects. And mathematics has no regard, as far as I know, for 4 behavioral components for a principal system. Maybe they just use the numeric object 1. But they do employ 1 and 0 and or 0 in their calculations as a function of one system behavioral component, any x or any operation expressed as a function as a behavioral component of functionality of any x. So mathematics includes all behavioral components in its expression of 1 and or 0, and the creed of mathematics comes from knowing that you can plug in a construct and it'll have a result, existential result, and that's the axiomatic nature of creed of mathematics. With this expression, any object expressed as a partial system expression has a result, and it can be expressed as part of the principal system or some partial system expression, and or both. Here's some applications for my approach to mathematics, the system and or subsystem paradigm. Some very interesting interpretations of current science interpretations and mathematical interpretations. The selection, omission of system components of behavior, operations, expressions, giving a mathematical transformation and functional with corresponding existential limits. Now, unconditional logic is a partial system expression of objects. You would call them, for instance, in some cases, physical attributes, mass, matter, might be an expression of unconditional logic, where partial operation on correct expressions would give of objects, mass, physical attributes of matter and mass would give unconditional logic, where all things are related to systems, but this could be a resultant. The resultant behavior could be gravitation. I feel that's a valid interpretation, existential interpretation within mathematics of gravity. Non-functional components of systems are quite often identified in behavior, and could be. I have a whole list of possible non-functional expressions. Some of them would be stupidity, quantum mechanics. System failure, and these are all partial system expressions of objects, and they exist in all objects and in all forms of expressions. I try to express a few on my website, zenmathematics.com. Expression of items and events for all objects. Objects in mathematics, items and or events. In math, it's when I say express things as items or items and item and events. In physics, maybe, or chemistry, might capture a different expression with item plus item, items equals an events plus item for chemistry. And in Zim mathematics, everything is expressed as items and or items and events is a true expression for any object. And I try to come up with some useful interpretations of behavior by expressing these objects differently with those items and or events. System, subsystem transformation give perception of time. Now, how am I going to express this in a minute? I think I go over this later on, and I think I will wait for that to explain this better then. But basically, the generation of unique items and events explain our current perception of time through system, subsystem, expression, transformations. Ongoing time is basically a generation of new events, items and events. There's really no past, future, present. It's just a continual generation of new items and events, and there's can derive some new interpretations of time with other system and or subsystem expressions. Tree of knowledge of good and evil is a subsystem expressed as a system. I get into this a lot more in my existential synopsis. Basically, in the tree of knowledge of good and evil, mankind, in this particular modality of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, mankind took ownership of this paradigm and took out components and expressed them to get results, and and build on it and depends on it, and it's all partial system expressions expressed as systems and as a system, but they are not regarding the true functionality of the object, and you will never achieve with this paradigm, tree of knowledge of good and evil paradigm, you will never achieve system-wide functionality because it's a partial system construct expressed as a partial system construct, which will give you just an ever diminishing return. And the tree of knowledge, tree of life, would be the object, the functional, any objects expressed as part of a principal system, so to speak. As I talked about before, I'll try to clarify this a little more later down in the presentation. Here I get into the tree of life here. The tree of life could be modeled as that Venn diagram on the right, which could be considered the functional source for any object. Any object could be expressed as a full functionality or a partial system expression. And so that could be considered the tree of life or a functional source for any object. The original transformation, what was the original system, subsystem transformation? I'm not sure what it is. It could be expressed as to the right. I get into that in my existential synopsis presentation quite a bit. And I don't know if I really do determine what is the original transformation, except as a source of earthly solar transformation function. And I don't know if that's an original transformation or not. It could be considered one of them. The nature of the qualitative construct is a partial system expression, probably derived its power or source from such a thing as a solar Earth transformation functions, and functions. That might be a good way of doing that. The multiple function transformation would give original qualitative constructs. Universe creation is a logical derivation of items and events. So the source of creation from some item or event, or item and event, it does not make sense to me, especially within consideration of my paradigm. Some item or some event will not cause the creation of the universe. is a logical expression or derivation, and probably ongoing. I thought this was interesting. I haven't dealt with this extensively enough here or elsewhere, so I thought I'd try again here. And I call this another slide IQ math or knowledge math. Different ways of determining states of knowledge, and within the items and or events dynamic of expressions and the system and or subsystem paradigm, our knowledge our knowledge states can be given a new dimension depending on how we expressed it with this information. A could be knowledge, B could be knowledge, and C could be the intersection between knowledge, and D could be some omniscient state or not principal system knowledge state. And the dynamic comes from where you can express any of these A, B, C, or D knowledge states as either items and or events, plural or singular, and you can describe them as systems and or subsystems, and you can just, with a given A, B, C, D, you can get different knowledge states depending on how you express these. And so I think that's pretty interesting, right? It's contemporary knowledge anyway, and IQ as it is now is basically a partial system construct, and we basically express our knowledge, a partial system construct, with other partial system constructs, and get more partial system constructs, which is a manifestation of our life on earth with the tree of knowledge of good and evil found in the Bible. So that's an important development for sciences and math and knowledge in general, and theology too. They deal with knowledge, and so this put a different context on that. Here I describe, it's a math concept, art analysis. It really shows how you can, just by doing with some of your ideas, making a drawing, you can graphically highlight new knowledge that you've been talking about and know about. The real universe, any object can be described this way, including the universe. The universe can have many features to it, depending on how you express it. There's no fundamental basis for the universe. F1, F0, F1 and 0. The red is the universe. F0 is all knowledge, maybe, and F1 is functional context of the universe for God, and our knowledge that we know about on Earth would be the intersection of those, and F1 and or 0, or some partial construct. We might try to expand our knowledge to the complete circle, but by expression of symbolic expression, I don't think we'll get there, and we get ever diminishing returns basically from that approach. And there are other methods of expression I highlight that may help in our expansion of knowledge and system-wide results. System-wide results, and so I get this from working with this kind of work. Here I come up with another approach to this paradigm or application or whatever you want to call it. I came up with this thought experiment with reintroduction to me of the chicken or the egg paradox, which came first, the chicken or the egg. And if you express life on Earth as a system, you get different results than if you express the life on Earth as a system and or subsystem. And this could solve which came first, the chicken or the egg, and maybe depending on how you express it, you get the chicken, and how you express it another way, you get the egg, and so which came first is not totally relevant within this approach, and how you express it, and so I'll go on. Just some doodling of math concept art, and I'm not sure what I come up with by looking at this. I still keep it here because I think it's kind of neat. I'm not sure why exactly. It's part of results of my methodology. operations are supposed to be expressed as systems, according to my theory, and maybe they have supposed different coordinates with a different space, and so somehow this is true. Maybe I think it is, and I've done some more artwork with this type of thought behind it, and so I just thought I'd bring it up here. Here is some applications I get from my work in Read Math. Here's the math farms. You might think this is kind of a silly concept, but when you consider some options made available with my paradigm, they're on expressing life and creation of life and nurturing of life and other possibilities for object creation within my paradigm that just gives new options for farms. Growing things, nurturing things, and creating things, and so it's not so silly and possibly very useful. Non-functional components as a resource for defense systems. This is only one possibility for new options for defense systems, a non-functional component, which can be found in any object. The whole system and our subsystem paradigm brings forth reality component to defense systems, war, and so forth. Just the fact, being aware of these options could be useful in defense systems. Being aware of reality is also important. And go on. Here I just try to document graphically what I'm talking about and the options available to something as a defense system. You can model a defense system as items and or events, as a subsystem, reality B, or part of a principal system, reality A, as a qualitative construct or numeric construct, and the items or events of concerns with possible other constructs modeled as other constructs, and other constructs within that, and just a whole new expression for the possibilities in defense systems. Quite frequently, humanity has gone into some form of mining for resources. People mining, resource mining, systems mining is what I'm calling it here, or soft energy sources. I think there's this shows a possibility of objective and reproducible soft energy resources. And I get into this a little bit in my next slide. Here I'm showing, again, like graphically showing, hopefully, how this could manifest itself, systems mining of soft energy sources within my mathematical paradigm. Here I use again the reality tree, which is a humorous way of graphically showing this, but not so bad a way to metaphorically describe what I'm saying quickly. We were talking about maybe a reality A with sub-realities with their own functional context. Every object has its own functional context, non-stated functionality and functionality, which is could be said to be a reality B. Systems minor can be expressed as items and or events, as a subsystem or some form of principal system. Again, the principal system could be some construct, qualitative, physical, numeric, some unknown, or operational. Not operational here, but it could be. Identified soft energy source could be a subsystem, a reality B, or a principal system A. Construct I'm trying to show in reality F and reality E that the constructs, their parameterizations affect how they will behave with your expression, of course. And, so I'll go on. Here, items and events clocks give me time relativity. Now, it's my premise that the behavior of clocks determine our perception of time. But there are different ways, I feel, to express these clocks as items and or events. And this is some form of expression of system and or subsystem paradigm. And I get into some math art on this, and on math art and analysis 2, and maybe we can go to that and get into that some more. But here I have a new slide, talk about it some more. I don't know if anyone will care about time relativity, but the expression of clocks in different forms is interesting to me. The clock, again, here can be a subsystem or part of the principal system. It can be expressed as items and or events, or as a function of basic operations as modeled as a principal system or some subsystem of the clock itself. The reference it could be given to the behavior could be to some subsystem of principal system A or a subsystem of reality B. Space could be a subset of reality B of the clock, or it could be a separate subspace for principal system or some subspace of some reality C. Could have different clocks and different hierarchies here of realities, and so we'll give a new measurement of time, and it's all very interesting to me. I described before how gravitation can be another form of unconditional logic or expression of objects, in this case mass matter as systems as opposed to systems and or subsystems, and here I'll go over a graphic and try to show how that works. Here I put mass matter as some partial system expression, usually reality B, C, D, E, or F, not always considered as part of a principal system expression, and how these mass matter partial system expressions are modeled. You get different forms of gravity or behavior in general. First of all, principal system could be a qualitative construct or a numeric construct or some operational construct. Depending on how you model the principal system, you'll get different behavior of mass matter or gravity. Items and events, they can be modeled as items and or events. I would model them myself as items and events. So this might explain a lot of the variation or problems with finding a basis for gravity. I'm just trying to show graphically here how what unconditional logic, in this case for mass matter, might look like. It by looking at it, you can get a feel for how you would call this unconditional logic, and why it's interesting to call it that way, because all items are related, because it's expressed as a system. Any object expressed as a system would look like this. As a system and subsystem, you get different results, of course, and that's not so crazy. It's in fact so intuitively obvious. We wonder why we haven't thought of it before, maybe. And this can express many other phenomena besides gravity, love, other organizational phenomena, and it's a lot of fun. There are other forms of unconditional logic, like I described in the previous slide, and like behavior, organizational behavior, quantum mechanics, atom behavior, and non-equality axiom. I just thought I'd better mention this because a lot of math, of course, assumes equivalency is possible among objects, symbolic and otherwise, and I feel that that's not the case. There's such a thing within my paradigm, the system and our subsystem paradigm, that no two objects or any set of objects can be said to be equivalent functionally, and qualitative and quantitative properties are always unique. And this explains, as I said before, our perception of time, expression of any objects, given new unique objects, and that's how we experience ongoing time, even though there is probably no such thing as past, present, and future. Reference mobile, transportation modality concept. I think I have a slide here. Basically, I'm trying to point out that you can come up with new modalities or concepts of transportation by expression of expressions of objects within my paradigm. I have shown that, or talked about how space mathematics could consist of expressions of subsystems of raised forms and constructs as systems, and as principal systems or otherwise. So here I'm trying to show some of the variations of that theme, where parameterization constructs could be determined in the modality of transportation also, a space constructs or so forth. And here again I show that they can be considered systems or subsystems of subsystems or different constructs. Some people might be concerned about the reducibility or physics to mathematics or the other way around, even though I do consider my paradigms as a dominant mathematical paradigm, but I feel it is all workable. It's, it's not our knowledge that's an error, it's our theories of knowledge that are an error, and it all fits in together. And math and its workability, I think, works well with science and theologies, and it's my view of it anyway, and just kind of expands on it quite a bit, and so that's how I feel about it. Here's some goals for 2013. I've upgraded them since the last presentation. Developing, I want to try to figure out methods and actual alternative existential constructs besides those we know about. So where I have numeric, operational, qualitative, unknowns, and some other constructs, such as I found in the Bible, the G-D construct, which may not be numeric, qualitative, unknown, or operational, so that might be a new construct. Another example I worked on before was using Chinese symbols as constructs, whereas I know Chinese, and this could be considered a kind of a construct. I've got some other graphics, could be considered other constructs, and I want to do a presentation on that. Pursuing additional creative mediums, just messing with stuff some more and see what I can come up with. I'd like to go over some of my existing artwork with some math art analysis and a mathematical context or functional context, see what new material I can come up with for mathematics. I want to do a non-logic exercise, additional non-logic exercises, just trying to show how things that we think may not be true or impossible could be somehow considered to be true. I'll just see what I can come up with. And the mathematics of operations as systems and possible alternatives to operational constructs. I feel this needs some work, a lot of work, maybe operations as subsystems, operations as a principal system or partial system constructs, or alternative operational constructs. So that's what I hope to do. The future of Zen mathematics and upcoming news items. I was looking for possibilities of presentations at nonprofits, churches, math conferences, and other mediums. I'm currently scheduled to present or have an exhibit at the Regional Math Association of America Conference in Denver on April 13th through 14th this year, 2012. And I'm hoping also to go to San Diego in January 2013 for the joint mathematics meeting sponsored by the MAA, Math Association of America, and American Mathematical Society, and other organizations. And I hope to I'm going to bring my existential synopsis to the regional conference this April, and hopefully a new DVD with this presentation to San Diego in 2013 and other material. And so I'm always trying to find ways of meeting the public on Zen mathematics or whatever. Thank you for listening to my presentation. This is a different presentation and I no script. It's notes from the slides, but that's all. I hope I added some dynamic or perspective on my material. Some of it is not entirely new from other presentations, but I hope the live aspect of it would be interesting to some people. So thank you very much. Here is a question-answer period. Of course, I have no audience here except myself. So I just thought I'd talk about questions in general. Here on the graphic in the center of the page above my slide is a self-portrait of Zim with a question mark with other questions and other people around him supposedly formatted as partial expressions, system expressions of questions. I get into question 3 a little bit. And here the questions are modeled as plus or minus, or so much variation, combination of those. And where Zim has a just expression, hopefully not a partial qualitative construct, hopefully not. I have an expression for, functional expression for any questions on mankind below. God, X, Max, Fy, giving any question of mankind, so whether that's a good one or not. X for X plus 1, unknown for known plus anything, any one thing, and I thought that was an interesting, cool way of putting a question, and I also use that to a different variation of that to model time. So, if you have any questions, you can always email me, and again, thank you for listening to my presentation.